told the agent, okay, look at our code base, understand our code base. Here's our user who's trying to sign up. Why can't they sign up? And it figured it out. Like, not only did it figure out what the problem was, it also figured out there were other problems that we didn't even know were problems.
It is mind blowing, and I'm gonna preface this by saying it's not just the tool alone. It's you and me with the tool. It's mind blowing the amount of work and useful output we've been able to get from it. At times I tell you, yes, I compare it to like, oh, this thing just achieved 6 months worth of work in a week.
Welcome, everybody, to Inside the Flows, episode 10. I'm your host, Iyassu, and I have with me special guest Juan Vallejo. Say hi, Juan, to the audience.
Thanks for having me. Yes, welcome, and hello, everybody.
I'm really excited to have Juan on the show because he is the brains behind all the technology at Inflows. So if you are a registered investment advisor, if you're an asset manager, a wealth manager, and you joined Inflows, the app or the website, like this is the guy that helped build it. Like really was instrumental at launching this app and for Inflows. And so, Juan, do you want to just introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the kind words and intro so far. Yes, that if I don't know what to say after that. It's a tough follow up, but yeah, I mean, I've been in the industry for about 10 years. I've it's met a lot of really cool people, smart people. Got the chance to learn so much that here we are using all that experience to build inflows in that what I think is a very cool and innovative way. Um, to be honest, I think the dynamic that we've achieved together is a really instrumental part of, the tools and the infrastructure we've built. You kind of need the two brains here, right? You need like the infrastructure tech side, and you need the financial side. Without either of you, just you have something anybody can make. So I think to that extent, I think the platform we've built and the work we've been doing is one of my favorite parts of having been in this industry. Uh, for this far.
Juan has saved me from many sleepless nights. Building software was not my background. I was in the asset management world, and so shifting over to software was a big, big change for me. And there was many sleepless nights that I had where I'd turn to Juan, and he would kind of calm the waters and tell me like everything's going to be okay. These are engineering issues that or engineering problems that can be solved. And the cool thing about Juan's cool collective manner in solving a lot of these problems is we have a working functioning app. I mean that's I think 99% of the world doesn't have that, and we do, which is awesome. To create something from nothing is really, really hard to do, and Juan has been with me on that journey since day one, which is great. And then now we have an even cooler journey with artificial intelligence, which is going to be the special topic for today. And I think I think Juan is on the how do I want to say this? It's like the bleeding edge of artificial intelligence, and we're going to talk more about what we've been doing, what we've been working on later on in the show. So I'm really excited to have Juan on the show to talk about it from a technical standpoint, from just a human standpoint, and then give some insights as to where we think the space is going. So really excited to have you on, Juan.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, really excited to be here.
All right. So we typically start the show with a weekly recap of what happened in the markets and in the space. So it's not just stock market stuff. It's also investment advisory. And because we have Juan on here, we're actually going to focus a little bit more on the AI space and what's been developing. So we're going to kick it off with earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday got to look at the cost of building the future of artificial intelligence. So, Wall Street Journal reported that the looked at the financial documents that OpenAI and Anthropic had produced to their investors about training and inference costs, and they combined it was something crazy like $127 billion over the next year that both are going to spend collectively. And it's hard to imagine. I mean, I don't even think they make $127 billion in revenue. So it's hard to grasp where like how much money is being spent and where it's being spent. So, I think for training and inference are the two biggest like costs that these companies have. And Juan, when you think about training and inference, like does 127 billion, does that sound like a reasonable number for training and inference costs for these two companies?
In a way, in a way. So it sounds like the number you throw to basically speed 10 years worth of development into 1 year, from my perspective here. Now, of course, we're moving pretty fast these days, so take that 10 years with a grain of salt here.
So I think people in the audience know what training is, but can you explain what an inference is?
Yeah, so basically, after you train a model, you essentially uh, want to produce a product that knows how to do word prediction, because essentially all these things are just really smart, really capable word predictors. So the inference part is you know, I guess the next steps towards getting these models being good at receiving inputs and formulating the right output based on that context. It's sort of like pre-baking, the product here.
The way I was understood it was, the inference is basically what the model spits back out to you. So if I say, "Hey, build me a recipe for Easter Sunday and make sure that, it's a recipe about cooking a turkey," and then the model comes back and says, "Okay, here's your recipe." That text that it gives back is the inference that these companies are spending. So it's like, you can give it a really cool question, but it has to be able to give you an even cooler answer, and that answer is the inference. Is that correct, or am I thinking of it wrong?
No, that is correct. That sounds about like the right definition. And yeah, so I guess in a good analogy could be, um, you teach a class of students about, uh, history, let's say. So now they know all about history, hopefully. And then the inference part would be when you give the class an exam or you give them, a project to present. So now they have to use that information they've learned about history to apply it and come up with maybe new conclusions or uh, ideas.
Yeah, and that's a great analogy as well. And yeah, I think for the costs that the OpenAI and Anthropic and there's other AI companies out there, a lot of it's going to infrastructure needs. So like physical, like literally the physical assets. So big warehouses with rows and rows and rows of NVIDIA like graphics cards, running 24/7, uh, and they call it compute, but those compute and data infrastructure needs are quite costly because $1 trillion companies want all of it, like, and there's just not enough to go around. So it seems like a spending war. And if you're an investor, you need to ask like, hey, is this investment into AI going to pay out over the long run? And that's the kind of bet you're making, or I don't know, call it a bet, but that's the kind of thought process that you're going to have to be thinking about. Is am I going to recoup my investment plus some, over a period of time, whatever your investment horizon is. And those are big numbers, and they're only going to get bigger. So it's really interesting with that, reading that article. Highly encourage folks to take a look at it.
Yeah, I guess one more thing I would say, I think, uh, you saw something to a lesser degree during the dot-com bubble where, it essentially people were online since the early 90s, since 93, I think is when the public officially started using the internet as we know it today. Um, Back then, you didn't have this sort of arms race going on because people were still discovering the potential of what this could be. This was sort of it's a cool idea, right? Who knows how the public might use it. Um, it kind of had this organic growth where this $127 billion worth of expense maybe stretched out over, 5 years or 10 years and, infrastructure build. Um, and even then, it took a couple of years for more of the general public to jump in and, kind of adopt this new technology. But it wasn't until, maybe the mid to late 2000s that, you know, it was extremely obvious by then what the potential of this technology was. Dot-com bubble had already burst a couple of years prior. Um, so it's sort of like by then people had no doubt in their minds that this was going to be a life-changing, world-changing innovation. And as a result, investment started exponentially coming in. And now you went from hundreds of millions of dollars in valuations to the trillion-dollar valuations we see today in the span of maybe 10 to 15 years at that point. So I think what we're seeing with this sort of spending today is, a compression, a crunch of that timeline into, a couple of years where instead of having the organic growth over the 90s and 2000s, they're hoping to kind of bring to fruition the final state of this technology as quickly as possible, which you're crunching all that spending over all lots of years into just a couple of years.
Wednesday, we shifted over from AI infrastructure and costs to something that's really, I think it's kind of interesting. It's they call it yield maxing. So for my younger audience members, you've heard of looks maxing, and kind of like the manosphere out there has these. I feel like max is going to be like the word of the year this year. So there's these, yield maxing strategies that are coming out. And by the way, I should preface this by saying, on this show, we don't give out investment advice. I've said it many, many times in other episodes that if you need financial advice, just hire a financial advisor. Like they're there to help you out. They'll be able to give you some really good insights and guidance as to what you should be doing with your money. But this show is purely educational, so do not take this as investment advice. Barron's dropped an article about these new yield maxing ETFs, and one of them was the yield max HIMS option income strategy, and so the way it worked is it's an ETF that is a single stock ETF, and it generates income by selling call options on that single security. And so you can generate income from selling those call options and get a yield. And for them, for the HIMS option one, it was pretty high. It was something north of 80% or 90%. The danger to that is the volatility in the stock. So if the stock is really volatile, then the ETF is going to be even more volatile, and then you also have a management fee on top of that you got to pay. So, your total return may not be great, even though you're getting a crazy yield. Were you able to take a look at that article, Juan, and just kind of any thoughts on these new exotic ETFs that are, single stock ETFs that are coming out?
Yeah, actually, quite a few thoughts. I've interacted with a few myself just last year to see what the hype was about. Um, I guess to say the least, the NAV decay that these are subject to is insane. It's crazy. I mean, there's a reason why the yield is so high, and it's because you're taking in all the risk. Essentially, you're taking in all of the um, you know downside unawareness, um, particularly at a time when markets are bigger than ever, have more you know I guess fluctuation uh, than ever, and so yeah, these look like great ideas on paper to someone that's kind of getting in and learning about dividends and maybe uh, you know trying to figure out how to make money without pushing buttons all day. Um, they might be good vehicles to use for people that are experienced and maybe want to use them as hedges, right? Temporary hedges because they want to take a short position, let's say, or a long position against a company. Um, and so, yeah, I would say the idea is novel for sure. I would paint these more as uh, they might be beneficial vehicles if you're experienced. They are a bit of a trap if you are starting out. So, if you have any clients out there that are asking about these and maybe they're insisting on, acquiring a position in one or two of these tickers, then maybe it's a good idea to kind of paint the landscape, inform a client, the risks, the hidden risks that come with these and why it's not sunshine and rainbows all the time and why, it's not a guaranteed 80%, return as one of, as the hymns one touts. Um, and, just because the NVIDIA one has been performing great, doesn't mean that it'll continue to perform great. It just means that, it is tracking an underlying ticker. So, you are deriving from something that has benefited recently, but it just means that you're that much more exposed when the tides turn, when there's a blip in the market or a change in strategy for that underlying.
Yeah, it just goes back to my whole point of, don't take this as investment advice. Like, really, you should talk to your financial advisor about this, and really understand how these new vehicles work. Because the I just remember last year I was learning about these yield maxing ETFs that had indexes as the underlying asset. So you had the S&P 500, or you had the Nasdaq, or the Dow Jones, and those aren't as volatile as single stocks. And so what they were able to do, and it's a lot of the biggest players in the space were offering this. So like Goldman Sachs was offering this, and they were and JP Morgan and all the big shops, and the returns were 14%, 15%, or sorry, I say returns, the yields were like 14-15%, which was at that time comparable, if not better, than how the indexes were performing at that given year, given point of the year. But the idea was that the person who would likely want to be exposed to that underlying index and still generate income was somebody who's getting close to retirement. So instead of allocating their portfolio towards like bonds, they could stay in the equity side and generate income like as if it was a bond. And that was the kind of the strategy behind those index based yield maxing ETFs. Now we have single stock ETFs, and that's even further on the risk curve than the index ones. And you get these like 80 huge numbers, 80-90%. And who's that going to attract? Naturally, because it's an ETF, it's going to attract retail. And so you really should consult with an advisor before diving into these kind of really like on the further end of the risk curve type of investment vehicles, because you could totally get hosed on this, regardless of all the marketing efforts that these index providers are saying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just a quick example. If you look at some of them, total return is significantly negative after counting, the dividend returns, the yields they have. So it's not just NAV decay, but total potential gain, is being missed out on here.
Yeah. And for some folks, it might be appropriate for them, but it's up to them to work with their advisor to figure that out, right? I would say, don't treat this like gambling, even though it kind of looks like gambling. Moving on to Thursday, so Amazon CEO Andy Jassy published his annual shareholder letter, and he directly addressed the capital spending matters that Amazon is I would say under the watchful eye of investors and the media. It was largely focused on AI infrastructure, and that's just a theme this week. It's just AI. That's all that was coming out this week in the financial reporting. So, Amazon's going to be spending quite a lot of money to boost their AI capabilities, data centers, software, like people. They're hiring, making sure they have top tier talent, um, chips, efficiencies, and so you should expect that going forward. And I think, do you have any thoughts on that shareholder letter, Juan, before I get into another shareholder letter that was always interesting to me about Amazon?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think off the top, all of the areas covered in that letter, um, they're not surprising, right? They're not coming out of nowhere. These are all key areas that, serve to expand what I think is, Amazon's bottom line ultimately. They care about having more people make deliveries, more people, use their online services. Then it makes sense that they would invest in, rural expansion of networks, the low Earth orbit satellite project that they've been working on that the investor letter had, um, and of course with AI, like they believe it or not, they are a robotics heavy company because they need robotics to operate their massive warehouses, their massive centers, and so it just makes sense that to gain more efficiency, you invest in AI to achieve that.
Yeah, I think for audience members that have don't really read annual shareholder letters, I would encourage you to read some of the largest publicly traded companies' shareholder letters because they will give you really good insights as to where the economy is going, particularly for those sectors that they're in. But even some of the folks like JB Diamond, whose company JP Morgan touches every part of the economy, you get some really good insights as to where the puck is going or where the ball's moving. I think one of the most interesting annual shareholder letters that I've read was from Jeff Bezos. It was his last shareholder letter. And Juan, in it, he basically talks about it was almost like a space engineer explaining, how the universe works. And he started talking about, I want to say it was like heat decay, but it was his philosophy of pushing back against the universe in that shareholder letter really explained to me his thinking when how he ran Amazon, and it explains a lot of the controversies that Amazon was in regarding human capital management, or basically like managing people. Right? They have a bad reputation with how they treat their warehouse workers. But if you read his last shareholder letter, I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but if you read it, you'll understand what was his driving motivation to push the people part of Amazon. So you get these insights, these really cool nuggets from these really important people at these companies by reading their annual shareholder letter. Yeah, it's there's a marketing team that makes all the grammar, or communication team that makes all the grammar look great and sound fluid or not. But the thoughts are what's really important. The high level principles that they push in their letters across the company and across the economy. So I thought it was, if you ever have a chance, Juan, you should read it. It'll explain a lot of Amazon's history. Just that last, you just got to read that last shareholder letter. It's a pretty cool insight.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like all of his knowledge and passions, which include rocketry and, yeah, of course, the universe, rolled into to good advice.
Yeah. And moving to Friday. So Friday is just the typical news. There is the Iran conflict going on. The administration has negotiated a very shaky ceasefire deal. Oil is still up, maybe not to the $130 a barrel like one of the Saudi ministers thought it would be going into April, but it's still up. Gas is still, breaking $5. Some places in California, it's like $7 a gallon, and I think I think we're starting to get surcharges. So Was it UPS? It was Amazon. I think Amazon is now charging a surcharge for shipments, because of, the spike in oil. So that hasn't resolved. It's a recurring theme on this show that, Fridays are just, what's going on with oil and the conflict in the Middle East. So nothing more to report on it, but it will have an impact on markets and the economy in general over the long period.
It will. I mean, I think I personally am of the belief that it is a key driver of inflation long term, and we've yet to see the shock and the aftermath of that.
Yeah, I think when the reserves if the reserves run out, then we'll see a shock. There'll be a shock if the reserves run out. And, for folks that aren't regulars on the show, I've been saying this for the past couple of episodes that the way you wanna think about oil prices is that it's not just like gas that's gonna get expensive, to Juan's point. It's gonna be everything that you make and everything that you transport is gonna get expensive. And so that's where the inflation is the price increases are gonna excuse me, gonna come from. It's that increase in energy costs and energy bleeds into everything. So that's hopefully this gets resolved sooner than what folks expect, and it'd be nice to get prices going down because I know everyone's feeling it in their wallet.
Yeah, yeah, and their yearly trips as well.
Yeah. All right, so moving on to our special topic for this episode, and this one I think I called it the cost of making AI. Juan and Juan and I were doing some deep dives on artificial intelligence and building things for inflows. And I think the way I'd summarize it is that Juan and I went on this expedition, really spearheaded by Juan, on hey, how do we leverage AI like a big company would? So like like an Anthropic or a Salesforce, somebody who has like a way bigger budget. Like how do we leverage the tools that we have to build really cool things for our inflows users and user base? And so Juan and I decided to go down instead of just building software directly. So just, Juan's on a keyboard, typing away code and whatnot. We started to use artificial intelligent agents. And these agents are the ones who actually go down and code things. And I think Juan, like, I'm going a little off script here, but how's that experience been for you? Because I think it's really important for our audience to understand how powerful AI agents are, or just artificial intelligence is, because it directly ties into the investment advisory world where folks are afraid that jobs are going to get taken and the AI is going to basically take over the investment advice space. And I wanna give them some insight as to what are the things you can do with AI, how they impact, what we're trying to develop or build, and then what are the kind of pros and cons to using AI. And so using our kind of past, what, month or 2 of using AI using AI, to build things at Inflows, like, what's the experience been for you?
Yeah, so those are pretty good questions. Yes, I think. Well, for starters, this was always an R&D experiment at the beginning. This was um, a way for us to essentially keep up with all the ideas we had, all the innovation we wanted to bring. Um, and so, the idea was never to just outright, hey, the age of the human is over. Let's bring on the age of the robot, right? It was more about, you know, uh, it's like you have so many thoughts and ideas in your head. What is the best way to scale and unlock, a bridge to get those ideas, to fruition? So best way, was to essentially use the best tooling we could make. Um, Sort of like adding an extra layer to your brain there to be able to surface those ideas out. And so it's been, quite an experience, quite a journey. We've experimented with just about every agentic technology we have out there that's, open source and cloud based. And For a while we were even using Anthropic as our backing models, and well, long story short, um, of course, this is not an outright, expert you get out of the box. You're not summoning a genie to come solve your problems, but uh, we did see it as a useful assistant, and that is, we haven't come up with a name yet for our agents, so just call them assistant. And the way to get the assistant to be a good assistant has been, of course, to essentially apply the same techniques you would with a new teammate, which is, you have to kind of handhold at first. You have to instruct, teach. Um, in some ways, we had to teach them how to learn as well, because when you just use a model out of the box, they don't really know about long-term memory. They don't really know. Every session is brand new. It's like you're talking to a new person, a person with amnesia, every time you start up a chat window, or you wake up the next day and you try to talk to them. They go, "What are you talking about?" Right? I don't know what you're talking about. So to really, kind of get the point across here, we did want a tool that was really useful, and we wanted it to feel like we were being assisted in our progress here. So we taught the tool uh, to be a better teammate. We taught the tool to think long term, to not forget important things, to make room for new things. So we're sort of starting to get into the like the how memory space would work for a human, maybe. Um, and so through that, we ended up with what I think at some point started to feel like a person on the other side, if you will. Um, so yeah, so you tell me if you had a similar experience, but you could almost feel the snark sometimes, and you could kind of it felt like we were not alone in this. Like we were accompanied by a competent tool that was able to carry us through tough thought processes, confront challenging problems with a little more confidence. So and so I think the mission accomplished part of this effort was that we unlocked better confidence. We stopped looking at problems as things far down the line that are going to be really hard to figure out. And we started seeing them as, hey, I'll just do this tomorrow, because we're confident that even if it's a hard problem, we have a good tool at our side to help us, think through and walk through all the logical steps of it.
I think the way the audience, the the different generations of listeners to the show would think about it is, it was like we created the computer from Star Trek. When Captain Picard would, like, tap his badge and say, "Computer, do this," and it would do it. And for the younger generation, it's like that video game Halo where the Master Chief has his AI agent called Cortana. It's like that's essentially what basically Juan built. Well, the technology was there. It's built by these AI companies, but the personality and the teachings, like you have to teach these models how you want them to act. Like Juan said, that was all Juan. Creating the personality, making it understand what to remember, what's important, what's not important, checking in on it. You do have to shape it the way you want it to be, and essentially it's like computer and Cortana, as a tool, and kind of like a person. Yeah, it was snarky. I mean, it is snarky. Now it's a little funnier. It's like it does the little emojis now when it's like done in celebrations. Like it's kind of cool. But I think, wh- I think the audience would wanna know, like, from a productivity perspective, like, how much work can this thing do on?
Yeah, so that is another good question. Y- It is mind blowing, and I'm gonna preface this by saying it's not just the tool alone. It's you and me with the tool. It's mind blowing the amount of work and useful output we've been able to get from it. At times I tell you, yes, I compare it to like, oh, this thing just achieved 6 months worth of work in a week.
I feel
Like
like it
these
was like a
are
day. No, I remember that. It was like we did in a day, like a 6 months worth of work, right? Like you're totally right. It's, for the folks in the audience, the AI is gonna take over the world. It's not. It's not really. It's you plus somebody. where it's somebody competent in software engineering and the AI are gonna be like Iron Man, like Tony Stark in the Iron Man armor, you know? Like, separately, they're okay, but when you put them together, it's like, "Wow, this is a hero right here." And the amount of productivity you can get out of it is amazing. And, you know, it was very that one day was very satisfying one.
Yeah, no, you almost, it paid for itself and then some that day. I mean, I would say, the key driver here behind that productivity gain is essentially just being consistent, right? Being patient because it will make mistakes. You just sort of treat it like an apprentice. You're kind of walking it through. It's gonna encounter new experiences because you're making it work on a product that it's never seen. It's just a super fresh mind that wants to learn. Um, and so, having the patience and the ability to be consistent and, knowing what lessons to reinforce, I think are key factors. And then on top of that, you actually have the time that, you and I put in, and mostly you actually put in to, drive it to understand key financial concepts and, so we take our development approach very methodically with these agents. Um, we wouldn't trust them to just go out on their own, and they can actually be autonomous, but it would be fruitless to just send them off and then come back in a couple of days and see what they achieved because you know they they need a manager, they need a guide. um, Otherwise they would go off and eventually like end up at a tangent. They would just kind of figure out, okay, maybe this is what the human wants, and so I'll do that. um, so you kind of need, for example, Yas, with you, the daily, check in from Yas, where you walk it through and you go, how are we doing on this? And, kind of checking off boxes, keeping it on track. Um, our methodical approach here is that we're design document based. We like to make proposals for every, feature we work on, for ourselves because we want to outline the cost and the risk and, the potential it has, but also for the agent because it allows the agent to, keep track of where it's, what it's doing, where things are going. It gives it the whole picture. And we found that once the agent has the whole picture, it is immensely more productive than if you just give it a slice of tasks and then have it figure out what, where they're going or why they need to be done.
Yeah, so for a good example is, I went to that Future Proof conference, and there was some people who were having problems, signing up, and as a test, we used the AI agent to kind of figure out what the problem was, and, as a concrete example, we told the agent, "Okay, look at our code base, understand our code base. Here's our user who's trying to sign up. Why can't they sign up?" And then it figured it out. Like, not only did it figure out what the problem was, it also figured out there were other problems that we didn't even know were problems. And so to Juan's point about once the agent understands your whole software stack, it becomes really, really helpful. Versus like if you just give it a piece of it, then it's it can kind of understand what's going on. Like if there's a very, very specific, line of code that's like kind of off, or there's a space when there should be a period or something like that. But when it gets a full understanding of your code base, oh man, that's where we got the 6 months worth of work out of it. Where I, basically said, "Hey, agent, like, tell me all the security vulnerabilities we have in this code base." And it was amazing what it found. And that goes to the quality of the agents that we're using, but also just like there's a human aspect of software development that is even the big shops are still trying to figure out how to get human error out of software development. So, because humans are humans, we make mistakes or we have our own styles. And when you have a bunch of people writing software for one program, then just imagine different stacks of different like flavors of software code stacked on top of each other. At some point they're not going to work well. But if you have an AI agent that writes one way and can produce volumes of code, oh, it's amazing. It's super efficient. It's super, slick for it to or easy for it to understand.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a one-person shop, so it's a one-person shop with infinite scale at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and, we're gonna be coming to market with a couple of new features, that I'm really excited about, and, Juan has been I keep saying but he's on the bleeding edge of this AI agentic, software development, and it's been quite a journey, and, one thing that, we got tripped up on was, we were using Anthropic's, Claude, model to power some of our agentic, agents, or sorry, AI agents. Um, and Anthropic just decided to, move anyone that was using, an AI agent on top of their model. So think of it as you have a captain of the ship that's the AI agent, and then the brain of that captain is like, ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, right? So Claude found a I would say Claude made some uh, financial decisions that if you were using a AI agent on top of its model, then you were no longer able to use it through their monthly subscription tier. You had to move towards their API tier. So we were we were taking really good advantage of the monthly subscription tier, I would say, and we were spending like $100 a month, maybe $120 a month. When they
Almost
shifted,
too good to be true there.
oh yeah, those are the good times, right, Juan?
It's
I
for,
mean,
yeah, incredible time. Like we just getting like, 60 or 70% of that quota usage that we got for $100 was already extremely valuable.
yeah,
So imagine if we were maxing it out, getting 100% quota usage, we would have was a steal essentially.
yeah. I mean, we would at some point I would have been out of ideas. Like, what else can we like do with this app? But so they moved everyone to the API usage, and what that is. Do you want to explain what the API is? Like what an API is, Juan?
Yeah, yeah. So, in I guess like most web applications, companies that run those applications expose certain hooks. Think of them like hooks, and you can use those hooks or endpoints to, you know, ask information about that web application. A good example would be, let's say that you want to build a program that tracks the market. So you would use APIs from your broker, right? All of them, all the major ones offer APIs. Your program would talk to these APIs, these hooks, and it would ask for data, about the market today, maybe certain tickers or, whatever news they offer about certain tickers today. Um, you could even ask about information about your account, right? You authenticate as yourself, and you can essentially have the program track your own portfolio's progress. Similarly, those hooks, can receive data. So maybe you want to make some updates to your portfolio with your program. You can. So these models work the same way. They're no different than web applications. They are software in the cloud at the end of the day. So they expose APIs in a similar way, so that just about anybody can build a similar program, and that program can, in this case, receive data from the models, which is the responses they give you. And you can, write data to them, which is when you're talking to them. You want to give them all the context. And so, you have these agents that Yas mentioned using these APIs uh, to be able to provide, massive context about I guess, the personality and the work you're trying to do. Um, Unfortunately, these APIs, I guess the new format they're using for these APIs is they're charging at a token level, which means the more personality and more information your agent has to provide, the more expensive each call to that API becomes. So you quickly run into this, billing issue when you have a big enough code base and a big enough personality, and you're using the agent multiple times a day, a couple hours per day. Um, so, after the Anthropic changes this weekend, we went from being able to have a sort of a price fix menu. You pay once and you eat as much as you can for these APIs. Towards now having to pay per plate, pay for batch of tokens we send. And we were realizing that, we were at that buffet and we were eating all the plates. So,
We're eating good at Sizzlers, guys.
so, we quickly had to pivot here, after we realized, that we're eating enough plates to kind of unwind our operation here if we're not careful, because we're just pumping out so many ideas and so much progress that, you know, um, we really stood to gain a lot more from the price fix menu that the APIs used to offer.
Yeah, so your AI agent wasn't able to like you AI agent wasn't able to use your monthly subscription anymore. They nixed that, and now they only gave you the API route, which is cost per token. And for folks, the way you want to think about tokens and AI agents is that as your AI agent gets better, it's because its memory has increased and the context in which you have asked it to do all these kinds of like works, like remembers that. So it has a lot of context about what you use it for and how you use it, how you interact, and that grows over time. But that context is a cost, and every time your AI agent talks to like a model like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude Code, that context also gets sent as tokens because it's using its history, it's using what it's learned to assess and answer your question or follow through on your instructions. So you went from this $100 a month, like all you can eat, to, oh my God, we got to be very efficient now when we use these models because they're getting it got quite expensive. So, I think $100, I was estimating that it would cost between $400 to $800 the amount in API costs with our usage. So, that's 8x 8x the cost. Like, can you imagine, some of the larger companies that were probably using this, what their API costs are going to be, for
Oh yeah,
Claude.
yeah,
So,
couple 100,000 more per month, I imagine.
yeah, yeah,
And these
oh
are
yeah,
the medium sized ones too.
yep, yeah, and it's not. Yeah, the way you wanna think about it, this isn't like Claude's fault or sorry, Anthropic's fault or anything like that. It's, we were using a subsidized version of their model, and we were taking, like, very clear advantage of it, and, it's the hype, right? Like, they wanna get as many users onto their platform, they want, a annual recurring revenue from them, and then when they realize, like, "Hey, these users are using our models in a way that we didn't intend," you gotta make a change because 'cause they're a business too, right? They gotta make money, but what that did was make us way more efficient, I think, in creating and using these AI agents to continue building, but that's there's a cost, right? And you should be if you are thinking of moving towards or more artificial intelligent agents to do more of work within your own company. Really plan this out. Like really take some time to understand what are the like do a cost analysis of what you're trying to do and get a number in your head because that's what you're going to have to spend.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, at the end of the day, the tool is worth what you, well, A, can afford, and B, what you know, make of it and produce with it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about APIs is that it is a pay as you go model, so definitely set some caps on what you're willing to spend on a month, and then don't be surprised if you burn through it faster than you expect. Because we're also new to this new AI, using AI as a model in your businesses. Like we as people, like as more people start using AI, we're all new to it, so we're not ourselves efficient at using AI. So there's going to be parts where you use, maybe a model that's way too sophisticated to answer like a very, very simple question. Then all of a sudden you used up like half your, like your half your budget right there for, using the wrong model. So you have to get more knowledgeable about how to use AI and be way more efficient with it. I think there's one thing that to tie this towards the investment advisory world, Juan, I think like, especially, like, asset managers, I think they're gonna be surprised at how well these models can perform at doing junior level work. So you could, create an AI agent that replicates what a junior security analyst does in their day-to-day job and have that AI agent be live 24/7. So, if anything happens in a stock in a portfolio, you're immediately getting messaged or you're getting an email. Or, if there's a shift in, like, say, I don't know, a sell side person sends out to, 4 in the morning a report, like you wake up and immediately your AI agent security analyst has already suggested position sizing for your portfolio, like that is definitely possible. Like, from what I've seen you be able to do with the AI agents that we use, like it's definitely like a future reality.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. Like, you can already have them act autonomously. Um, and we've seen a little bit of that, but we haven't quite yet. Our strategy is not quite to that point yet, where we just have an autonomous agent, acting on our behalf. You could totally have this adapted to businesses that do need that 24/7, monitoring and reactive, awareness.
Yeah, I mean, the agent has a heartbeat. Like, that tripped me out, and I was like, "What? It has a heartbeat?" Like, yeah, it actually, like, so, Juan and I left one of our agents working with the new cost structure of Anthropic, and I didn't know that there's something called a heartbeat, so it checks, like, every so often it checks and it uses the API, so it was spending, like, I don't know, $3 a day just kind of running in the background. So it's not fully autonomous, but, like, there's things like heartbeats. I'm like, "What? Is this thing real?" Like, do we have to start, asking it to, what's its favorite holidays and all that stuff, like, give some time off? But, I mean, even then, it, like, sleeps, right? It, like, just like you have to sleep to clear out, your brain, the AI agent also needs to sleep to clear out its memory, like, or cache its memory, and which is basically a way of storing your memory. So it has human qualities to it, which is kinda trippy.
Yeah, that's right. And of course, a lot of these human qualities, they don't come organically. You have to teach the agents how to do these. So it's sort of like, you know, biology has solved a lot of these issues for us, and so in turn, we kind of teach the agent how to solve it for themselves. For example, the memory issue. An agent doesn't know how to sleep, right? Doesn't know how to clean out its memories, form long-term memories out of the box. Um, so you have to kind of look at, okay, well, here's how a human would do it. So do the same thing, do this mechanism, uh, every couple hours, every day or so, take a little nap. During that nap, you're gonna, you know, take your memories, distill them, learn from them, adapt them to skills that, because agents have skills. It's a whole separate bucket of items that they can, store information in. And so, they're able to sleep and distill those memories into skills, grow those skills so they become better at coding or pushing code. Um, and then they form long-term memories so that they make room for new information to be sent to the model, the underlying model, um, without keeping the old stuff that it doesn't need anymore and bogging down that model and increasing costs also as a result.
Yeah, I should, I keep forgetting, like, some of this stuff is your secret sauce, right, Juan? So I won't reveal, too much anymore, but that's our, that's our special topic for today. I think the audience is gonna enjoy this one in particular because everyone's, like, wondering, like, like, everyone's afraid of, like, AI, but no one really talks about, like, how do you really use it? And I hope we've given them some good examples on, what you can do specifically with artificial intelligence and agents and Claude and Gemini and reading, your code base and asking it what are the securities vulnerabilities, when to clear out its memory so that it can, work functionally, how to give it personality, and even the example of, like, the security analyst, like, as an agent, that's definitely in the future. Yeah, it's coming up fast. So hopefully these examples will be useful to the audience members. And Juan, typically at the end of the show, I like to ask the special guests one question. What do you? It's actually my favorite question. So, what are you looking forward to next week?
Oh man, next week I'm looking forward to more market movement. More, I guess, more current events. The current events have been a sort of addiction of mine to just check very often nowadays. And so, you know, that and more progress with AI, of course. Mythos, the new model from Anthropic, just came out this past week, and so we continue hearing a lot of, good, scary uh, anecdotes from people around it, about the model. So I think we'll get more information about that model next week. More information about where the industry is heading. More implications for how humans will work in the future. So yeah, I think we're at a week by week basis on those things now instead of every couple of years checking in to see how humans, are evolving.
We know the AI is evolving, but are humans still evolving, or have we stopped
We're
relative
hanging
to
in
the
there.
AI? Yeah, right.
Oh no.
Yeah. What is that Wall Street Bets acronym? WAGMI. It's like we're all gonna make it.
We're all gonna make it.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank Juan for joining me as a special guest today on episode 10 of Inside the Flows. If you are a financial advisor, an asset manager, registered investment advisor, wealth manager, if you want to keep the conversation going, or if you have any questions you want to ask, join us on Inflows. It's free to join, inflows.com. It's an exclusive community for registered investment advisors, and we're happy to be there, and we're growing. I think we're over the 100 user mark now, with a little over $11 billion in assets represented by the financial advisory users. And we're going to be releasing some really cool features coming up too that I'm really excited about. So join us on inflows.com, and we will catch you all next week. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.